Welcome again to the Smart Lawyer. So, today we are going to discuss a very important topic. What is the difference between practicing in the lower courts and the higher courts? I get this question many a times from juniors that what is the difference between practicing in the trial court or lower courts or the higher courts? Because most of the time it is a career making decision for lot of students because they need to focus, and that is when I get asked this question many a times. So hence today I thought maybe I should deal with the issue. So at the outset, let me make it very clear and clarify that there is nothing as good court or bad court. All the courts are equally important, and as a lawyer you are supposed to take every court very seriously. So there is no degree of seriousness or degree of efficiency that I'm going to talk. I'm just going to talk about what are the different dynamics. So there is really, in the eyes of the law, there is no difference between any court as such, except for the powers and the authority that they exercise. So there is a difference of approach. Now, mainly trial courts or the lower courts are the ones which deals with facts. So as they say that the trial court is a court of facts, and they are more procedure driven. Trial courts are rule driven, and they have very little scope to actually deviate from the rules. So they are technical in nature. So hence, as a lawyer, you are supposed to be very well acquainted with the procedural law, such as CPC, CRPC, evidence. That really doesn't mean that you don't have to do anything else. As a lawyer, you need to know all the laws. Okay, there are thousands and thousands of legislations in this country. For that matter, India is one of the most legislated country in the world. I'm not telling you that you start by hearting everything, but whatever you need to know which is good for your practice, you definitely need to know. But especially if you are focusing on trials or trial courts, your procedural law has to be really well, and you need to be really good in it, because every application, every argument, every pleading that you make or file in the trial court is under some rule or the other. Okay, so there are civil court manuals. For that matter, even high courts have got their own rules for procedures. So it is not that practicing in a trial court is easier than that of a high court. For that matter, practicing in the lower courts or trial courts require a lot of energy and effort. On the contrary, practicing in the higher court requires little bit of additional qualities. I don't mean to discriminate between the two set of practices, but these are the practical observations that I've had in the last 20 years of my practice. So the higher courts have much more flexibility in dealing with the issue at hand. So, unlike trial courts, that they are, the way trial courts are bound in the four corners of the law, the higher courts have got much more flexibility. So for example, a high court under writ jurisdiction of 226 or Supreme Court under the Article 32 of the Constitution have got vast powers. Such powers a trial court cannot exercise. So that's the difference between the two. So flexibility is there in the higher courts. Hence, it becomes a little easier to practice in the higher courts. I'm not saying that it is extremely easy, it is little easier. Obviously, every practice, whether you're practicing in the high court or Supreme Court or lower courts, it requires a lot of efforts and lot of hard work. I'm not at all judging any lawyer here, or I'm not trying to create any differences. But what I'm trying to tell you is that it is little easier to practice in the high court than in the lower courts. In the higher courts, you need to, over and above the procedural law, you also need to have a good working knowledge of the constitutional law, because most of the times the high courts and the Supreme Courts deal with constitutional subjects, especially if you are focusing in the writ practice. You need to know the constitutional law really well. If you're practicing on the original side of the high court, or you're practicing on the appellate side, then there are rules governing the appeals. There are original side rules. For example, in the Bombay High Court, there are original side rules for the Bombay High Court. There are appellate side rules for the Bombay High Court. So as a practicing lawyer, you need to be very well acquainted with all the details. Now this subject is very vast. Okay, so the reason why we started this series, one of the reasons why we started this series was to explain such issues. So we'll try and cover in the subsequent videos more about such topics pertaining to the practice areas. Thank you.